Thank you, everybody, for joining. This is Education Life in the Pandemic. My name is Emma Rogers, and let's go ahead and get started. First question, number one. So the theme of our panel discussion today is Education Life in the Pandemic. From your perspective, what aspects of K-12 education have changed the most in the last 13 months since Governor Cooper made his first school closure announcement on March 14th, 2020?
Is Mr. Wallace on the line?
There he is.
How are y'all doing?
All right, sir.
I had you nervous, didn't I? Gotta make it interesting. I would say almost everything has changed in regards to what we do in our daily work. I know one big thing is the socio-emotional point of the students' rites of passage is what us principals had to really innovate and really find a way to celebrate those in regards to prom, in regards to graduation. A lot of principals found ways to make sure that they didn't miss that moment in time and made sure that their graduation photo and those mementos was on the wall with all their older siblings and their parents to make sure they didn't miss that rite of passage. The other thing that are the digital tools that we embraced and that we used to deploy the standards so the gap in learning wouldn't be manifested. And we're going to continue to use those as we go forward in the future, especially with the way we meet.
Yeah, I'd love to add on to that if I can, Mrs. Rogers.
Absolutely.
And to echo several of the sentiments that Tabari has talked about, and Tabari and I have been working in visiting different districts across the state throughout the pandemic and listening and learning to how many of them are transcending the challenges of COVID-19. And one of the ways that I've seen our districts in unbelievable and very innovative ways, and I know that Ms. Swanson will talk about this too, is looking at alternative and non-traditional ways to reach our students to allow them academic opportunities. What the pandemic has forced us to do in many ways, and not for all districts. And I do want to point out the fact that, there were many districts who actually, particularly districts like Mount Airy City, Perquimans County, who have been holding face-to-face class since August 17th. But many of our districts had to pivot, had to find those innovative and non-traditional ways, those alternative ways to reach their students. So we have gotten tremendously better in the delivery of remote learning options, to the point that I believe this will become a permanent fixture of how we deliver our instruction and how we provide opportunities to many of our students. There are multiple districts who've actually set up online academies to support this transition. And we'll probably see this continue into the 21-22 school year. We've seen amazing ones in Vance County and Pitt County and Catawba and Elkin City, to name a few. So that virtual hybrid partnership, along with the face-to-face, we've watched many of our teachers have dual roles simultaneously. So that pivot. There's also been some really innovative strategies in teaming up with a program called At Home Learning with North Carolina Public Television, where our teachers are recording standards-based lessons that teachers moving forward will be able to use to help supplement their instruction. So I think that's one particular way that I've seen some incredible opportunities for us to go beyond normal. And I really wanted to use that as kind of the tagline for what Mr. Wallace and our team have seen across the state is education life in the pandemic and that return to normalcy. That's not what we're doing. We are going beyond normal as we're moving forward.
And to piggyback off of what my partner Freebird just said, is one thing that I did leave out in my initial presentation was the focus on power standards for the LEAs or the PSUs that did have a shortened time with their babies. Instruction was kind of cut in half during digital learning when we first began this year. So a lot of teachers and a lot of administrators and POCs had to look at the standards and kind of remove all the fluff, because we went from 90 minutes to 45 minutes of instruction. And we're coining the term power standards. It's been out there for a while, but to focus on those standards, especially in math, that led to the next echelon as you build up to get prepared for the EOCs or the EOGs. And we all know reading is cyclic. It's a cyclical approach to the standards. And that's where we really focus. Teachers did a great job focusing on those power standards, so the babies will be ready when they take those tests in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm Erin Swanson. It's good to see everybody. I work at Edgecombe County Public Schools, so right down the road from the community college. So it's great to be here. And just to piggyback on what Freebird and Tabari shared, I mean, yeah, here locally, that focus on the power standards has been huge, as has that focus on just thinking creatively around how we can connect with our students. So I think when you talk to our students in Edgecombe, when you talk to our teachers, like that's what they miss most, is being able to be in a space together, to see each other in the morning and give each other hugs and high fives and, just have that personal connection. And so, teachers have done phenomenal work to still maintain those connections. A lot of our schools have held what they call advisory or team time meetings, like every single day, where they're getting online with a small group of kids. We've held learning pods in our community, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. Our teachers have gone into the community. They've met with students, whether it's, they get on a bus and drive to a community center, or whatever it takes to get those connections or to maintain those connections with students. That has been huge. I think that's been really just really, really critical, and it's been so impressive to see how all the educators in Edgecombe and across the state have really taken that on.
And thank you for allowing me to be with this August group, Mr. Wallace and Mr. McKinney, and of course, Ms. Swanson. From the Edgecombe, my name is Michael Jordan. I work at Edgecombe Community College. And from our perspective, we should have had this conversation long before now, because we are in the same game. And the difference is I see the parents of your children. And many times I see their big brothers and big sisters. And some of the same issues that your students have faced, our students have faced as well. And sometimes because they are the provider for the family, they faced just the economic issue, and along with the other things like broadband, the technology, the hotspots, the tutoring, just mental health issues, isolation, the financial aid component, just so many different things. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about relationship. One of the good things I noticed, and I like to give my homeboy, he doesn't know this, but I grew up in New Bern, and Mr. Wallace, he went to every student's house, to their home, and delivered their diplomas. And that relationship, I believe it extends past those students at West Craven High School in Vanceboro and those surrounding areas, because that relationship also extends here in Edgecombe County. Those things that you're doing, Mr. Wallace, and at West Craven, we're trying to do the same things with these students here at Edgecombe Community College. And that is create that connection. COVID was something that's been mentioned all day. It had never happened before. And we've had economic crashes, we've had floods and tornadoes, but nothing like this. So I'm just glad that I'm around a team of people who responded in the way that they did. Our president, our administration, and board of trustees, we're looking for ways to collaborate and make certain that we get out of this much, much better than we entered this. So thank you for allowing me to be a participant, but I'm excited about it. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else have anything to add? All righty, in that case, we're going to go ahead and move on. I've got another question here. Edgecombe County is one of 40 Tier 1 high poverty counties in our state, many of which are rural. What have been the unique challenges that high poverty counties have faced? And as a follow-up, what unique solutions, approaches, and innovations are you seeing around the state and locally to those challenges?
So I'll begin here, and again, and I'm sorry I failed to introduce myself. So my name is Freebird McKinney, and I serve as the Director of Government and Community Affairs for the State Board of Education and the Department of Public Instruction. So I am honored as well. We jump right in, and you could tell how passionate all four of us are about this topic. So I apologize for not introducing myself. As we've been traveling around the state, and I want to focus particularly on the eastern part of our state. You know, when we were in Pamlico County visiting, they had this saying, and it was called resiliency through displacement. And I think what a lot of the other regions across our state may fail to remember is that you all have been through multiple natural disasters, whether that's flooding, whether that's hurricane. They have names. They're Irene and Florence and Matthew. Like the lessons that you all learned through transcending the challenges there have really allowed you to provide lessons to the rest of the state. You know, when people talk about, you know, shutting down schools or you know, virtual remote learning, this part of the state actually had already really been doing these things. And so when the pandemic hit, you were battle tested. And I really want to lift that up because I don't know if the rest of the state really understands how much you have to teach the rest of us across the state, even as we continue to transcend this. But I feel like a few of the issues that we've seen, particularly in the rural areas, again, go back to connectivity with the internet. If we are talking about remote and digital learning and the pivot that we had to make, there is a huge chasm in the opportunities that exist when it comes to connectivity, whether that's cell service, whether that's internet. And I know this has been said multiple times is, you know, we have got as a state lift the burden from North Carolina public schools on this and put this on the rest of our states back as something that this has to be a statewide effort to move this to a utility rather than a luxury. When we were in Vance County, Dr. Tony Jackson talked about deputizing the community. And I feel like that's such an important aspect that we've learned from visiting so many of our districts is the community involvement that has taken place, whether that's through partnerships and developing summer school plans, whether that's offering after school programs that have internet connectivity to supplement what some of our students need, whether that's working with different groups to deliver lunches and breakfasts to our students in many of these rural areas. There's been a true deputizing of the community here, and I believe that's been a very important piece to lift up. And the second aspect that I want to talk about goes back to what Mr. Wallace discussed, which was this focus on social emotional and whole child and the extension of student support services that really focus on equitable opportunities for our students. Our students have so many variants of experience that are existing throughout this pandemic, whether that's in their home life, whether that's transportation availability, child nutrition pieces and insecurity in that, social emotional support, and even access to doctors, to nurses, and to some of our specialized instructional support staff. So how our districts have been able to provide those services has been no more than miraculous. It's been incredible and inspiring to see this. And I want to lift up the district's abilities to provide that for our students. But I think that has been one of the true challenges that so many of our districts have transcended in a collective manner.
Just a little, I wanted to reiterate just a little different perspective from the perspective of the community college student or higher ed. Community colleges have been hit really hard. Our students, as I mentioned earlier, they're the parents of most of your students, and so our students have been hit extremely hard. It was mentioned earlier today, and I found it to be very true. We have students who were forced to take online classes. They were in traditional classes, and we moved from face-to-face to virtual learning in a lot of respects. Those students were the same students whose children had to move to remote learning. There might have been one laptop in the house, maybe. And so they were sharing this laptop. And not only that, but the economic issues that also related to that. So it put our students in a really hard place. And very quickly, we were able to provide loaner laptops. We had food distribution. We mentioned testing site opportunities for our students and their families. And even now, we're looking out for our students and providing them with vaccination sites. But one of the things that has been really good as a part of the stimulus package was the CARES Act and the HERS Act monies that we've been able to provide to our students. That money, we were able to turn it around very quickly and put that in their pocketbooks. And that money went directly to them, and they were able to take care of their families. And I believe that made a big difference, especially in this area. The community college student isn't the university student. That student usually works part-time. Most of our students, 75% of our students work. So they were hit extremely hard, and a lot of that was in food service and food service and deliveries and things of that nature. So along with that opportunity, we've been able to turn that around, and hopefully our students have seen the benefit of being able to access those funds.
Excellent. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, if you got time, I got something to add, Emma, always.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
I would say, being that we're neighbors, West Craven and Edgecombe is pretty much neighbors. That's why I love Matt Bristow Smith so much. He's like my brother to me. We share the same issues with broadband, internet devices. Even though we've been through the floods, we always thought of those short term, and we would always come back. But this was long standing, and that was always a problem. And during those shortages, as y'all mentioned earlier, I think Erin mentioned it with the hubs. We did the same thing here, and the hubs were created out of necessity. Once March 15th hit, we sent the babies home, and even though our babies had one-to-one with iPads, what we found out was they were glorious weights, paper weights, because if you can't connect to anything, you can't do anything for it. But again, we had to be innovative. So we came up with going to get jump drives, and didn't know with Apple products you had to get a special wire for the jump drives, but we got those materials, just like Michael said, putting it in their pocketbook so they had it. So they could come to the school or go to a hub, download the synchronous instruction, download the teacher so they could get to see their teacher teach. We all know in SEL, that is a big byproduct of success, seeing that teacher teach, and then going in and then doing the asynchronous portion offline where they can turn their work in, and then you upload it the next time you're next to the internet. So the community came together, opening up their doors and turning their Wi-Fi wide open so these babies could get their instruction. Last but not, and then when we couldn't, we just went back to the Stone Age. We went back and we sent packets home. A lot of teachers I know in Edgecombe went to the house, taught from the porch. I mean, we all came together to make sure that gap in learning did not progress. Last but not least, something unique to this area, and I know Freebird would agree, he's working in lockstep with me on the Human Capital Roundtable trying to remedy this, is staffing. Edgecombe leads the county with y'all grow your own program that's now being copied across the state, because people don't know this, but the byproduct of the flood Freebird mentioned, all three of them, was a lot of our human capital was displaced and they moved out. The North Carolina Teaching Fellows Program they're housed largely in urban areas. And we know when we graduate from college, we usually stay kind of in the area we graduated from. So we have a unique problem over here, as well as the western part of the state, on trying to attract human capital back to the area. And I've just come up with a seamless trick on how to keep mine. I try to get them married real quick as VPs once they get in my building, so they can stay. And I don't have to worry about them leaving and being transit and going on after we've poured into that vessel. So those are two unique, distinctive challenges that we have on the East Coast as well as in the mountains, y'all. I'm in my new role. I've traveled a lot and I've seen they have the same problems that we have over here. But that staffing and internet, definitely the ESSER funds, we hope will help offset some of that.
Excellent. Thank you. All righty, let's go ahead and move forward. All right, here's another one for you guys. The COVID pandemic has disproportionately impacted communities of color across the country. What role has equity played in how you have approached your educational leadership, advocacy, and engagement during the pandemic?
Mm-hmm.
That's a great question, Emma, and I can start just with the local perspective, the local K-12 perspective, anyway. So yes, absolutely. About 70% of our scholars here in Edgecombe identify as students of color. We have some of the highest rates of child poverty, the highest rates of unemployment in the state. And these are challenges that we've been facing. Or those challenges in particular we've been facing long before the pandemic. But you're right. I mean, I think they've all been exacerbated by the pandemic. And our kids have really, they felt a lot of loss, right? They've lost friends and family members. Their parents have lost jobs. They have lost these connections that they've, had to their friends. Like Tabari said, they've lost the opportunity to be a part of graduation ceremonies and proms. And, so our students have really felt that over the course of the past year. I know we've also just been talking about the broadband, right? Like that's been huge. Our students, when we closed in March, some of them were disconnected for a long time because, it took us a while to get those hotspots out to students or to create those learning pods. We worked as quickly as we could, but for some kids, it was several weeks before we were really connecting with them again in a meaningful way. And so, what we've tried to do in Edgecombe County Schools is really think about, how do we know, like really deeply know every child and every family and their situation, and then how do we help put in support so that child, that family can thrive, right? Like that's what equity is being sure that every family, every child has what they need to be successful and to really live the life of their dreams. And so, the equity is sort of baked into our model, right? Like we do all of our work through human-centered design. So when we think about like creating new learning experiences for kids or new approaches in our schools, we use design thinking. And two of the principles of design are design with and not for, right? So we are not in the business of designing for our kids or for our communities. We bring our kids and our communities into the process and design with them, right? Like they know best what they need and what they want to be successful. And so they have to be at the table for those conversations. And then we also think about designing at the margins, right? So how do we design for our students who are most marginalized? Because if we do that, like it is very likely that we're going to design great things for everybody. Right. So those are the principles that we brought into innovation in this pandemic as well. Right. So when we realized, gosh, like our kids are struggling right now, like we started by making phone calls, going out to houses, like you were saying, Tabari, we got on buses, we talked to people and said, like, what is it that you need right now? How can we be helpful to you right now? And then we said, great, like let's actually like bring you to the table to design these solutions. And that's where this idea of learning pods, learning hubs, really came from. We'd heard that more affluent communities and families were hiring teachers, paying top dollar for tutors to be able to come into their homes. And we were like, that's probably not going to be an option for our kids, but our kids still deserve all of those same chances and opportunities and supports that more affluent kids have. And so we said, gosh, we can make that happen, right? And so we partnered with amazing organizations like the Franklinton Center at Bricks. We partnered with the folks at Cokie Road Apartments. We brought some kids into our schools and we created these learning opportunities for them there so they could have what they needed. What they were telling us was they need internet access and they need some face-to-face instruction and connection. And that's what we were able to give them. And so, since then, we've been able to apply for some grants to to really take this like beyond the pandemic, like Freebird was saying, like we're going beyond normal. So now we're going to take these ideas and all the things we've learned through these learning pods, and we're creating this like what we're calling a learning hub and spoke model, where kids are going to have a chance, like even after the pandemic, to keep learning in these small groups, to keep pursuing their passions, to keep building these connections with their peers and with an adult. So we've learned a lot, and I think a lot of the strategies that we have employed in the pandemic, we will continue to use after the pandemic because they're good for all kids. And I think, like Freebird said, the pandemic certainly has been a massive challenge for us in Edgecombe, but we had challenges before the pandemic. So like Freebird said, we've had some practice, right? Like we've had floods, we've had poverty, like we've had racism, right? Like we've been working towards equity for many years. And so for us, this has been a real push to ramp up our game and to continue the work that we've been doing for the last several years.
I want to, there's two words that Erin just mentioned, and I wanted to focus on those for a minute, and that was instruction and connection. Because the instruction has had to be even more engaging, even more meaningful than it's ever had to been, because so much has been done in very different circumstances, because we haven't had that opportunity in many cases to build those face-to-face relationships, to have those social events that Tabari mentioned, whether that be graduation or prom, whether that's athletics or chorus or band, like all of these opportunities that our students typically have and that our schools represent. So how we use that instruction to build those deeper sense of relationships with our students, but also that connection piece. And that means two things: the connection piece and the internet, literally, but also how are we connecting that instruction to what pathways they're looking at in later parts of their life. And I think that's been one of the real pivots that we've tried to look at from a statewide level. There's been many innovative ways that we're starting to approach that, and we're looking at different districts as these models, particularly like a graduate profile, and building out workforce development partnerships with our CTE programs. The more and more we travel around, the more and more we see the ability for many of our districts to engage our students, to pull them kind of back to our schools and these opportunities, because I think that's what's going to be so important as we transcend these challenges we have right now, and not only recover, but go again beyond normalcy. Is how do we teach that our students that what they're doing right now connects at a much deeper level to a pathway that they might not be able to see right now, and how do we provide those opportunities for our students to do that? And there's where equity becomes so important as the framework and the mindset that we use, because this pandemic has definitely placed a glaring light on many of the inequities that existed before, as Mr. Jordan was commenting on. So how do we take those lessons that we were already learning from generations in the past to this right here, and again, build a connection to the next step in life for our students, but also allowing that instruction to drive that. So I think those are 2 points I really appreciated Erin lifting up. Those have been 2 ways that we've really tried to focus now, but also moving forward and building out what are the next steps once we get back, particularly as we transition into summer school, but also into 21, 22 and beyond.
And were you about to say something, Emma? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm chilling.
Okay. I was wondering. I didn't want to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Definitely equity. And as we've been saying at the state board for the last 3 years, it definitely means each and every, because you can get lost in all. Personalized approach, continuous support, curriculum that is relevant to each unique culture, and have a subgroup approach when it comes to accountability. During the pandemic, all that was exemplified. Every last bit of those constructs were exemplified. What we had to do at West Craven High School, we have an approach already where we give students a choice. We truly believe in the career and college promise. If you're on the college side, we make sure to have avid strategies that continuously support you to become a better college student. On the career side, we're a career academy school. All right. And the pandemic closed a lot of our internships that our babies would have been able to go to. So we had to find a way around it. And we were very unique in that. And we used a lot of digital tools to do it. Our kids know that if you make a 75 or above in all your classes, then you get an hour lunch. And believe it or not, the babies at home were still asking about that because they earned it. So what did we do? We created a digital power hour to make sure that the babies would not lose what they earned. Last but not least, children of color were adversely impacted, as well as low poverty students, because mama and daddy got laid off. You know, we had the highest unemployment that we've had in probably a generation. So what happened? Target started giving $15 an hour. Food Line went up to $12 an hour. Those are jobs that are aligned to the babies, to high school students. So my students were working during the day because they had to take care of their family. And again, education was second. So again, we had to come back to the table and get innovative. We had to relax some of the attendance rules and make sure as long as you submitted your work, it would be graded and it would be counted. So you can do both things at one time. Take care of your family and make sure that you continue your pursuit to be self-actualized. That in itself is equity and innovation. Ride or fly.
Yeah, and I'd hate to say anything to switch our track or anything, but Mr. Wallace mentioned how it affected the whole family, and it really did. Not just the proms, but you know, our graduation is a special thing because our graduation is sometimes the first graduation our students experience. You know, they might not have, for some reason or another, had an opportunity to experience a graduation in high school. Some come through our basic skills program and the GED is their first graduation. So, you know, we had to create an alternative, which was a virtual drive-through graduation. And it was special. And we had students show up in limousines and decorated their cars. And, you know, they made the best out of, you know, like my mother would say, they took lemonade and made lemonade. But our students were in, you know, they were having difficulties before this all started, like Mr. McKinney mentioned. And we had to take this opportunity to utilize, you know, the virtual platforms that we were given. We had never texted students. We started texting them. You know, we were accustomed to sending them emails, and you know how they are. They're ignored mails. So, you know, we had to learn how to communicate with our students where they are. And we had to take those opportunities, like we all agreed that it's about relationship. So we had to create another platform by which we could create that avenue to be able to communicate with our students on a regular basis. Some of our, Erin mentioned some statistics, and our statistics are a little different, Ms. Swanson, in that we have very few male students. And I say few, I'm talking about probably 25% of our students are male. A small majority of those are Black males or males of color. And so one of the things that we have done, we had a minority male program before, but we specifically targeted those males. We, our president and our impact coaches reached out to them, and we had fireside chat. We're getting ready to have our third activity. And those students were so appreciative that someone reached out to them because they were lost. They were, all those things we talked about before, they were isolated. They didn't have the technology, you know, all these sorts of things. And not only did we do that with our males, but we also did with our females as well through our butterfly impact, butterfly mentoring group as well. We had a drive-in movie last summer. And you would have thought, you know, my daughter doesn't know what a drive-in movie is, you know, but our students found out, you know, they had a drive-in, popcorn, that sort of thing. And you would be amazed how adults would have enjoyed something that really didn't cost us a whole lot of money to put on. So we opened our libraries, we opened our parking lots, we parked beside the school buses. You know, we found the hot spots, and we directed our students to those hot spots. We had students before we realized it who were coming out to campus, finding a hotspot and with a lawn chair and doing their work from a lawn chair. And that was back in March and April of last year. So our students helped us navigate some of these things. And I just say, I like what Mr. Freebird said about beyond normal. We're beyond that point. We can't go back to normal. It's just not a solution.
Excellent. Excellent points. All righty, let's go ahead and move on to our next question. When you think about how North Carolina public schools and higher education institutions have responded to the pandemic, what are you most proud of and why?
I'd like to jump in. I am proud of the way we responded and the ability to embrace the challenge. It required more out of the box thinking than I've ever been a part of. First time ever. Innovative approaches. We pivoted on a dime. I learned that in football. We pivoted on a dime. There were quick responses, effective approaches. We found ourselves doing things we had never done before, and never thought we would do. We were able to provide virtual instruction and student support in an effective manner to support student learning. So we had to almost on a dime figure out, respond to how we could provide instruction and in a manner in which we would be safe. We have some programs that you can't teach in a virtual setting. We had to figure out how we could provide nursing in a face-to-face an opportunity and keep our instructors and our students safe. And not only were they doing that, but they volunteered and they went out and they tested for COVID. And many of them, as I said before, many of our students already work as first responders. And so I believe our leadership team, our COVID task force, and we put our collective heads together. And I believe it helped, and it helped people keep people safe. It provided a relation for folk. And we identified every student, staff, faculty, every community person that we possibly could to make certain that they didn't have a need. We had food distributions on campus. We had talked about those things before, and basic skills made it happen in a week. Something that we've been planning for months, we were able to turn it around in 10 days. So we provided mental health resources and support. And I'm just proud of the fact that I work with people who are open-minded enough to realize that so many people depend on them, and don't mind no griping. This telework thing. I don't know about you guys, but I see Mr. Wallace. I don't think that's in the high school with a big Wallace on the wall. But anyway, I digress. But Matt told me to say that. Matt Smith told me to say that. But I just think that, in this telework environment, I know I found myself at home with a wife who was teleworking and a daughter who first year in college who was home as well. And there were just a lot of challenges, not only at work, but at home as well. And I just believe we did a good job. I'm excited about the outcomes and what we're going to do in the future.
And I'm going to go ahead and show my bias on this one, but I have been just humbled by the abilities of leaders at all levels. And I'm going to start with our student leaders in the classroom, our teacher leaders, our school leaders, and our principals, and then all the way up to a lot of my colleagues at the state level, and their ability to respond at every level to try their best to put students first as they've looked for answers. I mean, since March on, our teachers have had to figure out new ways to teach. Our principals have had to figure out new ways to lead their schools. And that is, expectations and autonomy and how the balance is laid down. But also, so very few of us across the state ever face anything like this. So just the resiliency and the ability to pivot and to continuously put students first in many of the decision-making processes. I still remain humble. Now we got miles to go before we sleep. Do not get me wrong. But the experiences that I think that we faced over this last year have really given us a very new lens and perspective as we right now within the department, as we're building onto what Mr. Wallace and I are a part of with Operation Polaris and the Office of Learning Recovery and the State Board of Education and the department, and how we're really trying to synergize what is the next steps of North Carolina Public Schools and what we need to do to provide equitable opportunities for education for each and every one of our students. So again, I know I'm biased in that, but that has really humbled me and many of my colleagues throughout this whole process.
I completely agree with that. And I would just add, I think one thing that's been amazing in our system, and not just our K-12 system, but, at the state level, at our community colleges, throughout the system, is just people's ability to really be ambidextrous, right? We talk a lot about ambidextrous leadership in our system. And, when we think about that, we think about, the need to respond to the immediate needs, right? Like our kids needed broadband access, our kids needed food, right? Like our kids needed this in-person instruction and great virtual instruction. And so, as a district, I think we were able to pursue those things while also continuing to pursue innovation, right? And continuing to pursue new ways of doing school and leveraging this moment as an opportunity to think about new ways of doing school and making school work for every one of our students. And I've been really impressed by our ability to kind of run on dual tracks throughout the course of the past year. And I do think we're going to come out of this even stronger than we were before.
And just to echo what Freebird said, he said one big word there, and that was resiliency. Through higher ed, through kindergarten, through K-12, the never quit attitude that we took when this thing hit us from the side. We were actually flying the ship while we were building it. There was not a book or manual or anything that was written for us to refer to. We had to refer to each other. And that kind of leads us to the second part of this, is the SEL of our adults, the SEL of our human capital. The children depend on us, but if our ship goes down, we can't carry anybody. So we really had to circle the wagons. There was no expert we can call to talk to and vent to. There was no one. I mean, who does the doctor go to when they get sick? Who does the pastor go to when they need prayer? Who does the therapist go to when they need counseling? They go to each other. And we did a great job doing that during this pandemic. We all circled the wagons and we all took care of each other, and we did endure it. We endured it. And just like Freebird said before, the pandemic and beyond, because now we are stronger, we are better, we are more competent, and I think we can tackle anything. Just like Michael said in the chat, I appreciate all educators.
Absolutely. Excellent. So we've talked a lot about what we've learned and all the great stuff we've done so far, but let's start looking forward. So as we move forward, what have we learned from the past and from this current circumstance that we can apply to both the short term and the long term as we continue to face these challenges, as we continue to respond to this pandemic?
I'll just say to start off, I mean, there is great wisdom in our communities. Yes. There is great wisdom on this call right now. I mean, we have phenomenal leaders here. Our scholars and their parents have just so much insight. And I think that when you let the folks that are in the midst of it, right, really lead the solution finding work and the design work, you end up with great things. And so I think, putting the power in the hands of the community, whether that's in the hands of the local district, in the hands of the local community college, in the hands of the local government, I think we have brilliance here, and we can figure it out in a way that works best for every one of our residents or students.
And I will say one big thing. I mean, one big thing when you said moving forward, what have we learned? I think what the community learned, that I think the respect to the educational institution has returned. Boy, you should have saw my phone ringing when you got parents home trying to do math 4, math
That's
3,
it.
and
Yeah.
British lit, and they're calling. I mean, parents was on the Zoom learning. I mean, so that's one thing that we can take into the future. The respect for the profession has returned, you know, and that's one good thing, and that's one thing that was lacking before. And one final thing is the way we communicate and the way we meet, and even the community has learned from that. All from Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, Cisco, WebEx. I can go on and on and on. But a lot of our public institutions and our nonprofits now, we don't have to drive 3 hours to make that meeting anymore. And now you can see the tent just expanding in all those organizations. Growth has returned, as well as for us. Being at the State Department, at the agency at DPI, we can reach from the mountains to Manio. I mean, we can definitely do it. We can bring everybody together. So that's one big thing moving forward, that now we have this tool that we're experienced in it. We know how to work it. We know how to deploy it. And now we can always bring our collective minds and thoughts together. Remember, George Curo said, the smartest person in the room is the room. And now we have a mechanism to make that happen.
And I think that what this has done is it's allowed us to continue the focus, but like keeping the end in mind, we have so many other opportunities now to define what education is and what it's leading to. And one of the main charges right now at the state level is looking at, you know, potentially what does a graduate profile look like? And we've talked about this in the earlier part of the conversation, the alternative pathways, the non-traditional ways that we get to that end, the way that we deliver instruction, the way that we provide opportunities to our students and our families. We've had this idea that there's so many educators that a student meets on a day-to-day basis, from the bus driver when they get on the bus, to the child nutrition staff, to the custodial staff, to their teachers, to the specialized instructional staff, their school leaders. But that circle has now been expanded to community partners, to the parents at home, to other relatives that have been helping out with remote and at-home learning, who've been offering transportation in all these multiple ways that we're trying to serve our students. So now, and again, I go back to that phrase that Dr. Jackson said, how can we now use that deputization of the community to what Erin just said? How do we bring in the multiplicity of the voices? How do we look who has not been represented at the table before in this process, but who now absolutely have had a hand in the transformation that has occurred as we've transcended this pandemic, and build something new with that same end in mind, which is providing that constitutional-based educational opportunity for each and every one of our students in North Carolina. And I think that's the opportunity that's really come out of this. We have been forged in fire, and we've come out stronger, as Tabari said.
And Ms. Rogers, I hate to do this. I know the religious session was before this, but I was reminded of a little bit from the Bible, to whom much is given, much is required. And then it also talks about iron sharpens iron. So Erin mentions, let's keep re-imaging school and work. And I believe that is a responsibility that we've been given because of what we've experienced. I realize personally that we're capable of so much more. We're not even finished. And our children, our adults, our learners, our community, in times of stress, we came out of it all right. And not only that, I believe we came out better because, as Mr. Wallace said, I've learned more technology. I had promised myself I was going to retire without learning it. And I have learned more in the last year than I knew in my whole previous time working. So I'm just encouraged by the opportunity, that how we have adapted, how we've excelled, but we also have more to go. It's possible. I know it is, and we can make the normal what used to be, and moving forward, we can be even greater than that. And I just want to shout out to the Edgecombe County Early College. I told you I worked at Edgecombe Community College, but we do have Edgecombe County Early College. The principal is Matt Smith. I just want y'all to know that.
He's busy making a school announcement. He didn't even hear his shout out. Oh, bless his heart, he doesn't hear. All right, I was going to give him a chance, but I don't think he heard us. Okay, excellent responses. Very, very great. As we're rounding out our hour, I do have one last question. This one's a little sillier, but stick with me. If you had to pick an anthem or a song to capture the response of the education community to the pandemic, what song would you choose? Let me hear them.
Okay.
I have a song, you know, I'm a 70s child. And McFadden and Whitehead had a song called Ain't No Stopping Us Now. And y'all Google that. I'm not gonna sing it for you, but it epitomizes what we've been through.
I'm gonna go back a few years too to Journey's "Don't Stop Believin'," because I do think like everybody has just kept on believing through all of this. I mean, we have a school that started a micro school this past year over at West Edgecombe. You know, they were like they did a whole new school model in the middle of a pandemic. You know, Matt Smith at the early college, they didn't say, let's shut down the Scholar Teachers. I mean, they brought more people into the Scholar Teachers program, right? So, you know, the belief has still been pervasive, and it's just prevailed, I think, over the course of the last year.
Well, I am absolutely a glass overflowing kind of guy. So I'm going to go with Ben Harper. I can change the world with my own two hands, make a better place with my own two hands. But and I think that echoes what I saw Matt put in the chat, and that's, you know, we learn from each other, but we are stronger together. So I hope that everybody on here, you know, realizes that we can do it with our own two hands, but we do it a whole lot better when we work collaboratively and collectively. So amen, and thank you for this opportunity to be on this, as Michael said, august panel, and listening and learning from my colleagues.
Please, Emma, please tell me you're recording this.
Oh, yes.
Oh, please send me a copy of this.
It will live on.
I've got to let Superintendent Truitt hear what just happened 30 seconds ago. Oh, my goodness. We're going to have fun with this when we get back to the agency on Monday. But
Michael took me to church. I had to go.
Iron sharpens iron, my brother. But I'm gonna say one for myself, and then I'm gonna say one for Matt Bristow Smith. All right, because I know he would say this one, because I know he said it to me before at the state board. But mine is gonna be "Ain't No Mountain High Enough," and I'm not gonna sing it. God knows I'm not. But if you listen to the words of that, we just personalize all that we've done, and what the indelible Matt Bristow Smith, you got to put "the" in front of it. Matt Bristow Smith would say, would be "The Eye of the Tiger."
Yep.
If you listen to that song, I'm telling you, that's exactly Matt Bristow Smith, buddy. So those are my two right there. The song speaks for itself. I don't even have to explain. Please, OMG.
Oh my goodness. I love it. Well, I want to thank absolutely everybody for being here, for being a part of this, for everybody who contributed. I had a great time listening to all the wisdom that was shared. We are recording this, so do not worry. And copies will circulate. We will have those forever. Alrighty. I'm going to hand it back over to Carol, and I'm going to step back. Thank you, everybody.
What a fantastic panel we just had. How amazing was that? We just thank all of you who were a big part of it. Just thank you for being part of our global education virtual symposium. At the community college, sometimes, we forget that that our partnership needs to go more than just outside our walls. And I need to commend the early college. Yes, I'm talking about you, Matt Smith and Emma Rogers. And and Edgecombe schools with their involvement with us. And we just, we realized that education is not just a higher thing, that it has been a massively challenging year, from very bottom to very, very top. And we I hope we can share more times like this. I was serious when I said that if y'all want to reconvene the panel, that we would be more than happy to allow that. I just want to thank too Emma Rogers for stepping in. She is, I put out the call. I'm Carol Maley, chairperson of the Diversity and Global Connections Committee, and I had wanted for early college to be a part of our goals, the committee's goals, because they're a part of us at Edgecombe Community College. And Emma stepped up and has provided some awesome, amazing leadership. And just, I mean, awesome. We just had two principals of the year, a teacher of the year, and of course the best Michael Jordan around. He stepped away and probably didn't even hear me say that. We love our Michael Jordan here at ECC. And we're just very fortunate as well to have another great panel coming up in about 4 minutes at 3 o'clock, which is healthcare in the pandemic. And I think there are a lot of the committee members here from the Diversity and Global Connections Committee that's hosting this. And this is I feel like this is our big visibility thing, but we try to stay kind of connected all through the year, and try to serve. And we try to talk about the topics of the time, talk about everything that has gone on, trying to have a timely topic and just cover as much as we can. And I feel like we have just covered a lot today. So Jennifer Poole, if you want to go ahead, I might turn it over to you, but I want to say too, right around the same time that Emma Rogers joined the committee, Jennifer did as well. Jennifer Poole did as well. And again, she has hit the ground running. Folks who have been at the symposium or have attended several symposia before, they know I tended to have my A team, and they 1, 2, 3, they all retired. And I am so happy to say that I have a new A team, and it's girl powered. So Jennifer, I'm gonna stop recording the 2 o'clock session.